we want to see a new momentum for concrete progress on global nuclear disarmament. In the follow-up of the conferences in Norway and in Mexico, we hope that our discussions here in Vienna will contribute to this aim.
Let us move forward courageously by concretizing our visions so that we can make the 70th anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki the appropriate milestone to achieve our goal to prohibit and to eliminate nuclear weapons.
I am convinced that the desire for peace and fraternity, planted deep in the human heart, will bear fruit in concrete ways to ensure that nuclear weapons are banned once and for all.
This awareness must translate into action on how we can immediately and effectively ban and eliminate the world's remaining nuclear weapons.
It is time for states to start working on a legal ban on nuclear weapons.
The only way to guarantee the security that we all seek is through the total elimination of nuclear weapons and their prohibition. It is indeed an anomaly that nuclear weapons remain the only weapons of mass destruction that have yet to be subjected to a comprehensive global prohibition.
We support further discussion in a concrete direction, including on the possibility of a legal instrument to address this deficit.
This must now be translated into meaningful action towards a treaty to outlaw and eliminate nuclear weapons.
The international community needs to take immediate action to fully ban nuclear weapons.
The discussion and conclusion should therefore feed a diplomatic process leading to the negotiation and conclusion of a legally binding instrument for their prohibition.
Nuclear weapons must now be expressly prohibited and eliminated as a matter of urgency.
We also support the call by this conference of adopting in the near future an international legally binding instrument to prohibit nuclear weapons.
Jordan urges an anti-nuclear armament culture as a prerequisite for nuclear security, reaffirming the need for joint international efforts towards nuclear disarmament, and joins the United Nations calls for the early start of negotiations on a legally binding instrument on the ban of nuclear weapons.
The Senegal delegation invites those states to join this movement, which is growing, in order that long-term we can see emerge an international convention, legally binding one, banning all nuclear weapons.
Timor-Leste joins the other countries in calling for dialogue and diplomatic process that will ban nuclear weapons.
We need to create conditions so that this would be abrogated or at least ban their use through a convention that would complement the non-proliferation treaty.
This conference in Vienna strengthens further our resolve to support the growing trend to ban nuclear weapons.
Uruguay wishes to express its strong support of a legally binding instrument that would prohibit nuclear weapons.
The exchanges of these 2 days should lead to the launching of a diplomatic process aimed at negotiating and adopting a legal tool banning nuclear weapons.
We must immediately embark on concrete measures on how the legally binding international instrument that outlaws the use, production, deployment, stockpiling and transfer of nuclear weapons can be realized.
It calls to begin a negotiation program so we could finally create a legally binding instrument that would prohibit the production, development, acquisition, testing, stockpiling, transfer, use, or threat of use of nuclear weapons.
We hope to finalize a process by which states can begin negotiating a legally binding instrument prohibiting nuclear weapons.
The role of the public is essential for the achievement of the goal of banning nuclear weapons and their elimination.
In Oslo, Nayarit, and Vienna, we may have the most concrete proof that in our new world we have a real option to prohibit nuclear weapons, the only ones that could end life on Earth.
My delegation therefore welcomes the continued consideration of the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons and supports the logical conclusion of the evidence-based gatherings in Oslo and Nariet, and now Vienna, to launch a diplomatic process to prohibit nuclear weapons.
Guinea-Bissau thinks that it is time to trigger a diplomatic process.
It is therefore with a sense of urgency that we engage in the discourse on nuclear disarmament and move towards a ban on these lethal weapons.
We join to the call in the Conference of Nayarit to begin as soon as possible a process that would lead us to the negotiation of a legally binding instrument.
We strongly believe that this conference will greatly contribute to the further promotion of the humanitarian issue in the context of a nuclear weapons ban.
The time has come to initiate a diplomatic process to negotiate a legally binding instrument that prohibits nuclear weapons.
This is the time to outlaw the nuclear weapons before the world experiences a nuclear terror.
We support a negotiation inclusive process with civil society to be able to have a legally binding instrument prohibiting nuclear weapons.
We think it's time to start a serious diplomatic process to negotiate a legally binding instrument prohibiting nuclear weapons, and we stand ready to join such process.
We have confidence that the overwhelming majority of states will join this process, and we look forward to accompanying you along the road to a treaty banning nuclear weapons.
Many delegations stressed the need for security for all and underscored that the only way to guarantee that security is through the total elimination of nuclear weapons and their prohibition. They expressed support for the negotiation of a new legal instrument prohibiting nuclear weapons.
Austria calls on all states parties to the NPT to renew their commitment to the urgent and full implementation of existing obligations under Article 6, and to this end to identify and pursue effective measures to fill the legal gap for the prohibition and elimination of nuclear weapons, and Austria pledges to cooperate with all stakeholders to achieve this goal.